Hi, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining us. I'm DeMarco Morgan. A lot to talk about. The White House as President Trump has invited Russian President Vladimir Putin to the United States. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders confirmed the invitation on Twitter Thursday. The White House says the summit will happen sometime this fall. Now, the invitation comes as the president faces criticism over his summit with Vladimir Putin earlier this week. On Thursday, the president's director of national intelligence, Dan Coats, said he wished Mr. Trump had not spoken with his Russian counterpart alone. He also expressed surprise when told about plans for a second meeting between the two leaders. CBS News Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues has the latest.
3 days after the private meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin, Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats acknowledged that he still doesn't know what was agreed to and thinks the president shouldn't have met him alone.
Well, you're right. I don't know what happened in that meeting. I think as time goes by, and the president has already mentioned some things that happened in that meeting, I think we will learn more. But that is the president's prerogative. If you had asked me how that ought to be conducted, I would have suggested a different way.
Coats has been sounding the alarm about the ongoing cyber threat from Russia.
They are the ones that are trying to undermine our basic values, divide us with our allies. They are the ones that are trying to wreak havoc over our election process. We need to call them out on that. It's critical that we do so.
On Monday, the president seemed to accept Putin's denial that Russia interfered in the 2016 election.
My people came to me, Dan Coats came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia.
But in an interview yesterday with Jeff Glor, President Trump acknowledged Putin was behind the 2016 meddling and said he backed his intelligence community.
Coats says the threat is ongoing. Do you agree with that?
It better not be. It better not be.
Have you talked to Coats since you got back?
Yeah, I have, sure.
What do you say?
Just talk generally speaking. Yeah, he agrees with the statement you made. And I go along with him.
Just as Coats was being interviewed today, the White House announced another meeting this fall between President Trump and Putin, this time in Washington.
The White House has announced on Twitter that Vladimir Putin is coming to the White House in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be special.
Coats calls Russia the most aggressive cyber adversary the U.S. is currently facing. He also said today that there is a plus side to the internet, but he said the dark side is that financial institutions, critical infrastructure, and industries are under attack. DeMarco.
All right, Jeff, a couple of questions for you. Did Coats discuss why he chose to speak out publicly on the president's summit with Putin?
Well, what he said is he had to set the record straight. This is someone who's been in Washington for a long time, and he knows that part of his job as the Director of National Intelligence is to put an accurate picture of the national security threats out there, and that's what, in his view, he was doing by setting the record straight and making it clear that the intelligence agencies saw the threat from Russia in a different way than the president projected, certainly on Monday with Vladimir Putin. So this was Dan Coats who said that he was trying to set the record straight.
As he said whether he considered resigning or if his speaking out could cost him his job.
Well, there was no threat from what we've heard of resigning. But again, he is someone who's been around Washington for a long time. He was a senator. And he told the president, and this is something that he conveyed in this interview today, that he told the president before he took the job, there are going to be times where he would have to deliver bad news. And that statement that he released on Monday, which contradicted the president's statement, may have been one of those moments. But it was a moment that Dan Coats certainly was prepared to do, given his experience in Washington.
Jeff, what about providing any information as to why he thinks Russia is interfering in U.S. elections and if there were any other countries that presented a similar threat?
Well, even though the president has projected a mixed message on this issue, U.S. intelligence agencies have been firm in their assessment of this Russian threat. There is no doubt in their view that Russian intelligence operatives interfered in the 2016 election, and this is something that was done with the blessing of Vladimir Putin. You cannot, and I've talked to both law enforcement and intelligence officials, you cannot carry out that kind of elaborate operation in Russia without the blessing of Vladimir Putin. And so there has been unanimous agreement in the intelligence and law enforcement circles that this was an operation that originated in Russia.
Did Director Coates lay out any steps the intelligence community is taking to prevent Russian meddling in future elections? That's a big question.
Well, and that is an important question as we head into the midterm elections and the 2020 presidential elections beyond that. U.S. officials, not only in Congress, but in intelligence circles and with the Department of Homeland Security and DOJ, they are taking steps. Even though some of those steps are coming 18 months after the 2016 election. But one thing that the Department of Justice is just unveiling is this plan to make sure that the public knows this time around if there is some foreign adversary or foreign government trying to meddle in these elections. That really did not happen in an effective manner during 2016, because during that period, the Obama administration was concerned about accusations that if they came out and made it public that Russian operatives were trying to interfere in the election, there would be accusations against them that they were trying to put the finger on the scale for Hillary Clinton. So what the Department of Justice is now announcing is really a departure from that, because the feeling is whenever you have these types of intrusions, you have to stop them by naming and shaming. You have to let whoever's doing it, whoever's behind it, and in this case, U.S. officials believe it's Russia, you have to let them know that you know what they're doing.
All right, Jeff, and a final question for you. A number of Democratic lawmakers have introduced the Secure America from Russian Interference Act. What exactly are they proposing in this act?
Well, again, this is another effort by lawmakers in Washington to point the finger of blame clearly at the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin, because this week certainly there is this confusion, created by the president's statement in Helsinki. It has raised the confusion around this issue, but there is no doubt in the minds of most lawmakers on Capitol Hill and certainly the intelligence community that this was an operation that originated in Russia and that was carried out by Russian intelligence operatives.
All right, Jeff Pegues in Washington. Jeff, thank you.
My pleasure.